In previous lectures, we've looked at the nutrient needs of athletes and the difference between endurance, strength, and team sports and how we calculate their needs based on body weight. Previously, before we were talking about athletes, we looked at percentages. We talked about the percentage of carbs, protein, and fat. And again, when we talked about nutrient needs of athletes, that's one way we can also calculate nutrient needs of athletes. The downside of that is it isn't accounting for the need for these nutrients and making sure really that an athlete is getting adequate amounts of carbohydrates and protein. So we're looking at it in a different way to really make sure they're getting adequate calories and getting these nutrients in the right quantities to accomplish optimal performance, what we're aiming for. So today we're going to talk about how do we actually do the math? How do we calculate this? So when we're looking at an athlete, what are going to be the nutrient needs specifically for that athlete? So the first thing we look at, what we've talked about before, comparing an endurance athlete to a strength and power athlete, both are somewhere between 6 and 10 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram body weight. An endurance athlete, 1.2 to 2.0 grams of protein per kilogram body weight, and 1.4 to 2.5 grams of protein per kilogram body weight for a strength or power athlete. Then when we're talking about a team sport athlete, we will somewhere in between this. It depends on the sport, it depends on the athlete, it depends on the position they play. So each of those will need to be looked at differently. So here's an example of someone we're going to calculate. It's a 35-year-old woman. She's 5'8", 175 pounds, and she's a Nordic skier. So I want you to first think about what you're going to recommend for grams of carbohydrates and protein, and then estimating how much percentage of the diet is coming from fat. So what are some questions you might want to ask that athlete? You might want to know what their current eating habits are, so you have an idea of about where their consistent calorie intake is in their diet. You'd also want to understand their weight goals. Are they trying to increase muscle mass? Are they trying to gain some weight or lose weight? So we will do these calculations, but I want your recommendations to be based on some solid knowledge. And you won't necessarily have that knowledge, of course, when you're doing these problems in an assignment, but I want you to make a recommendation with a comprehensive explanation about why that is what you recommended, based on what their current eating habits are, based on the weight of this individual. This is what I would recommend. So for this woman, what I'm recommending is 8 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram body weight and 1.5 grams of protein per kilogram body weight. And what is my explanation for that? She is a healthy weight. She wants to maintain her weight, and so I'm staying in the middle of each of those ranges. She's not trying to increase muscle mass, so I don't think that she needs to get up to the high level of protein intake. She's not trying to gain weight again, so I don't want to go to the high level of carbohydrate intake, but I'm going to go somewhere in the middle. And then, of course, I would be comparing to what she is consuming in calories and what her percentages look like, and potentially make some adjustments to that if that is necessary. For this woman, I'm also suggesting 20% of her diet coming from fat, not too high levels of fat. This is an endurance sport, so we don't want to be slowing digestion and having excess quantity of fat, but going very low in fat, of course, is not healthy either. We need to get adequate nutrients for her. So this is how I'm going to make that breakdown, and that's my explanation of why. So let's do the math. So first of all, we need to calculate her kilograms of body weight because that's what we'll use for our formulas. So for 175 pounds, we divide that by 2.2, and she's 79.5 kilograms. Then taking each of those recommendations times her body weight in kilograms. So 79.5 kilograms times 8 grams of carbohydrate recommendation equals 636 grams of carbohydrate per day. Multiplying that times 4 calories in every gram of carbohydrate gives us a total calorie just coming from carbohydrates of 2,544 calories. For protein intake, 79.5 kilograms times 1.5 grams of protein equals 119 grams of protein times, again, 4 calories for every gram of protein equals 477 calories coming from protein. Then we use those calories from carbs and protein to look at how much that total calorie is going to equal to based on our percentage from fat. So now I'm going to take my total calories from carbs and protein. So I take 2,544 plus 477. So I get 3,021 calories coming from carbohydrates and protein. I'm recommending, again, about 20% of her diet coming from fat. So I take my calories from the other macronutrients, which is then 80%, 80 and 20, 80 from carbs and protein, 20 from fat. So I take 3,021 calories, divide that by 0.8 to get 3,776 total calories that she's consuming. If I was dealing with an actual athlete, I would then again compare their calorie intake. Is this in a pretty close range to what feels good for her, where she feels satisfied, she's not super hungry on that? If she's generally eating 5,000 calories a day and I do the math and I calculate 3,700, then I'm going to want to bump these numbers up. Maybe I'm going to go up to closer to 10 grams of carbs per kilogram body weight. But to be able to represent what is this breakdown going to look like, then when I come to designing a meal plan, which you're going to be doing next, is I can start to break down what that meal plan needs to look like for this athlete in order to achieve optimal performance. Then the last component of this assignment is to discuss if you think this is a realistic plan. If you do all this math and you come up with 8,000 calories a day, and this is a 5'8", 175-pound Nordic skier, you might think that perhaps that's going to be a little higher than what she's normally eating. If you're dealing with a 300-pound football player, perhaps 8,000 calories a day would be more appropriate. If I do the math and I come up with 2,000 calories a day for this skier, I might suggest that maybe that's a little bit low and we want to bump these up. In nutrition, we also have to look at how is this going to fit in a person's lifestyle? Is this a realistic eating plan for them? So doing the math, I want you to then discuss, again, is this realistic? How is this going to work for them? And is this the best plan that I've laid out?